Good afternoon, viewers. My name is Amitabh Singh, and I welcome you to the fifth episode of IFA-India Academy's monthly webcast series on international tax and transfer pricing topics. I have a distinguished panel of guests before me, and I would like to introduce them right away. Uh, I will first introduce Mr. G. Srivastava, who is ex-IRS, DGIT, has been the Director General International Tax, and is an advocate. He has appeared on behalf of the department on many landmark cases as a standing counsel. Am I right, Mr. Srivastava? Welcome. I welcome you to the webcast. To my right is equally known face, Mr. Kamlesh Varshney. Uh, he is called the APA Commissioner. I guess it's Commissioner Income Tax Advanced Pricing Agreements, and he's been very much in the news, especially in the fora of international tax and transfer pricing. Uh, to facing me is Vijay Iyer, who's partner in ENY and transfer pricing leader for India. So I welcome all three of you to the webcast. Thank you for supporting this initiative. Uh, we have two key topics today, and if we get time, then we will discuss the third one. The first topic is one which hit the headlines on 10th of March, almost like a thunderbolt, I would say, which is the instruction number 3, as they say, of 2016. And if I remember, the first time such instruction came, that too was also instruction number 3.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 2003.
2003, 3 of 2003, and then now we are at 3 of 2016. And it came on 10th of March with immediate effect, uh, almost directing the assessing officers to take immediate action on that. And so, Vijay, considering that in October itself, a revised set of instructions had come, and the preamble to the instruction number 3 says that there were a lot of stakeholders who had given suggestions. So I don't recall that suggestions were asked for. So was it like how did it happen from 15, instruction 15 to 3? Do you have any insight on that?
So I think this was all in the context of BEPS that all these conversations happened to say that there should be risk-based assessments. And those conversations said that in the past we've always had a threshold-based assessment. If your transaction value exceeds a particular value, you will go through an assessment, but we should get into risk-based. And this has to be more direct and more specific, and it should not be left to discretion. So that was the request that was being made continuously. Maybe it was just part of a larger discussion and not specifically in this context.
Okay.
But it was always raised that there has to be more guidance to try and make this more effective than just leave it at a high level to say it will be a risk-based assessment.
And did it have what kind of impact, Mr. Srivastava, it had on the clients? And then I would come to what impact it would have had on the AO now that 31st March is over. Uh,
I believe the instructions were very specific to go in for risk-based selection of cases. Now, that was a demand within the department also, as I understand, in different organizations, wherever the conferences, etc., people were interacting. This was a clear-cut suggestion made time and again, and CBDT was considering this aspect for very long. And that is in tune with the best practices available elsewhere also.
right.
I mean, you don't go for TP audits in a routine manner in all and every sundry cases. So it is going to impact the taxpayers in a very positive way, in the sense that now with the parameters being set out in a cash-based system, I think which will be more objective and some degree of purpose to serve in that tax audit. I think it is going to be a good step and right step for taxpayers as well. So as far as the impact, what is impact has done, I'm not aware. 31st March has gone.
Yeah.
If any case had to be recalled
Mhm.
as per the instructions, I don't
It
know.
has happened. Yeah.
It has may have happened.
So
that
that was the point
yeah.
I was.
So I'm really not aware of the numbers
Right.
and how many classes the recall had to be done. But yes, the instructions were very clear that if there was any reference between this
Mhm.
and the other one, yeah, those had to be recalled. So in a way, it's good. But this goes on the presumption that the parameters had been set out in this period.
Mhm.
That we proceed with that assumption that there were certain risk-based parameters which were applied for those cases referred to during this period also.
So was it, Varshney sir, was it fair to make it immediate effect, in the sense it hardly gave the assessing officers 14 working days, and I know in March there are no holidays. Uh,
See, first of all, I will say that it was not like a thunderstorm. It was more like a healthy rainfall in a desert. Okay, so first of all, we should be clear about that. And that, yes, there could be some cases, and that may be because of some different interpretation of earlier instruction number 15 of 2015, that some cases may have got referred. But it's not that large number of cases got referred. And in any case, none of them, I'm pretty sure none of them would have got time barred on 31st March. Every case must have been completed. So that is the past now. Let's look for future. And that is, this instruction is very good so far as the future is concerned. So I think whatever cases had to be recalled, assessment had to be done by 31st March, that must have already been done, and that is over. So now let's look forward.
So the past is behind us. Jo hona tha,
Yes.
it's done. Let's
Some effort was required, but I think the officers managed it.
Yes.
And some cases have got recalled. So I think numbers around 40, 45, which is not too many, but there were a few. And those are the cases which now, under that 10 crore limit, they were not falling, so that we called back. So
okay, and that brings me to the key part of the new instruction, which is the role of the AO. There is a role of AO which is coming from the Act, which is under 92 C and 92 CA, and there is a role of the AO which is given in the instruction. And one of the clear clarification is that the AO shall not make the determination of arm's length price. While in the statute, it is clearly said that he will determine the ELP and then he will arrive at the income thereafter. So, I would like to hear your views on does that in a way restrict the AO from what were his statutory rights are?
yes. So two things. One is that the law as it stands, the AO is entitled to decide what cases should be referred to. That is in the law. And if he thinks that there are certain cases which deserve to be assessed, he can send it out to the transfer pricing officer. But whatever the transfer pricing officer concludes, that is binding on him. So that is the way the law stands today. So one step in this is still discretionary as to what to refer, what not to refer. That piece has been curtailed because of this, because now it says that even if you feel that there is a particular assessee who is not at arm's length, who has reported all transactions of the past, has not gone through a survey, search, whatever, and there is no past precedence of an adjustment over 10 crores. So if you're still feeling that the transaction doesn't meet arm's length, you still cannot refer it, you still cannot do a TP adjustment. So that kind of curtails his power. So it is good for the assessee, but from an assessing officer's authority point of view, it curtails his authority.
Srivastava sir?
See, the whole exercise, of TP, as enacted in law, it proceeds on the assumption that assessing officers will not have the necessary capacity or expertise to make the adjustment, and that is in the law itself. So, and they will not have the expertise, and an expertise is required here. Once that is accepted in principle, then the only question remains is what cases to refer to an expert. Now, in that, it's always, I mean, right from 2003 when the law was enacted, then also this problem came because AOs do not have the expertise to even draw the nuances of TP, which case to refer and which not to. So 2003 said is a monetary limit cap was put. That cap was revised, then instruction of 15 came. So this has always, I mean, the CBDT under 119 has all the powers to regulate the administration of law. And in what manner the law should be administered best in the best interest of revenue and for the good of the taxpayer. That's for CBDT to decide. So I do not find any illegality in this.
Right.
And the powers as such are not being taken away. Only his discretion is not unfettered. It's being regulated in a way that, yes, these are the cases where you will consider necessary and expedient to refer.
So we are telling the AO what is necessary and expedient.
That is being explained to the assessing officer that these are the cases being necessary and expedient.
As an AO, will you be happy?
No, see, I think there are two issues to this angle. Before coming down to the shoes of AO, we need to step onto the shoes of CBDT. And there are two angles to it. One is legal, which Srivastava sir just now mentioned, that section 119 gives power to CBDT to regulate in which manner AO should exercise his discretion. And that is exactly what CBDT has done. And it has not been done for the first time. Even for selection of normal cases for scrutiny, there is a CAS system, and CBDT decides what are the parameters for selecting cases under CAS. It is not AO who decides. So AO has a discretion as per the law to select cases for scrutiny, but it is CBDT which prescribes the guideline to our system people that on what parameter you need to run the system to select cases for scrutiny. So it is very much legal and desirable, particularly when you want that discretion to be used in a risk-based manner. Right. Because once you have a risk-based audit, that risk-based parameter have to be decided at a center place. Now, each assessing officer cannot have different risk parameter at his own end.
Right.
And that is where policy comes in. If you have noticed that last 2 years, the department has been moving towards non-adversarial tax regime. Not only this instruction, whether APA or whether various circulars which have been issued to clarify law, the monetary limit which has been put up to file appeal in ITAT in High Court. So all this is a movement toward non-adversarial tax regime. Once you move towards non-adversarial tax regime, there is a risk, and that risk is revenue loss. So that revenue loss you have to be mindful. So in CBDT has to be mindful of that revenue loss, and in order to do that, it is desirable that instead of doing large number of cases and burdening transfer pricing officers with so many cases, let's have only a few cases which are selected on risk-based parameter, and our transfer pricing officer do quality audit on that, so that any revenue loss which can arise due to non-adversarial tax regime can be taken care of. So this is the policy angle to this instructions. Now, once you look at the both legal and policy angle, I don't think the AO would be dissatisfied with this instruction.
Okay. So, as a taxpayer or somebody representing the taxpayer's interest, do you think this removal of discretion or arbitrariness, as we can see, is good for the taxpayer?
Yeah, it is good. So this circular certainly is good because a large number of cases that go through assessment will no longer have to go through. So if you look at the statistics that you would normally find, out of 100 cases that were getting referred earlier, 50 of them were getting clean orders, and 50 were suffering adjustment. So the ones which were getting clean orders will not get picked up anymore. The ones which are getting adjusted, out of that 50, there will be some of them, at least let's say 20 of them, would be below the 10 crore limit. maybe some part of that would be where even if it's 5 crores, but it is in respect of a transaction that is not reported, like an advertising transaction. We don't report it as a transaction. It can be picked up again for assessment, even if it's less than 10 crores.
Right.
So let's say out of that, what 15% will still drop out. So we will end up with only 35% companies having to go through an assessment.
Right.
And that certainly reduces the burden of the taxpayer.
Right.
So that's good. Of course, there is the same team of TPOs available to handle now 35% cases. So it'll be far more intrusive, more discussions. And as a professional, I don't mind that because I can have a more technical discussion now than purely on comparables and number crunching, which is what was happening with limited bandwidth.
So the quality of audit outcomes is expected to increase, which is, I think, the taxpayer also sees as a silver lining, and definitely the revenue.
That is what the intention is.
That's what it
yes.
is. Yeah.
And it's clearly within the framework of what the government has promised, that a non-adversarial tax regime, removing the discretionary powers, to a certain extent as much as possible. So you mentioned CAS, and you also mentioned CAS and risk-based system. So of course, that is a black box. Nobody knows what's inside, what kind of parameters are being put in. Is there how does that system work? Would you be able to share something? Because if I were to look at it, what's going into it is the ITR, what's submitted in the ITR, and maybe the Form 3CB data. Is that enough to create risk parameters around it?
Yes, right now it is enough. In fact, if you go through the risk parameter of international organizations like OECD and others, most of the information, which is only a suggestion, So if you look at those, that probably you can pick up cases for transfer pricing audit. If this happened, that happened. Those information one can easily pick up from Form 3CEB, right? Now, what happens here when we talk about risk parameter is that CBDT decides. Each year they will decide that, okay, this year we are going to select cases on these risk parameters, and then those risk parameters would be given to the system people to run.
Right.
Now we don't know those risk parameters, right? And so that is I that cannot be shared. What will be the risk parameters?
So the AO is not privy to the risk parameters.
AO is not. AO is not privy to those risk parameters.
He just gets the result.
Yes,
of that.
he just gets the result.
Okay.
Now this will also keep on improving. Now once we have CBC in place, country by country reporting in place, so a lot of countries have already enacted CBC, including India.
Right.
And once we start receiving reports from other countries for the foreign multinationals who are working in India, and once we have those report with us, so they will also be captured. In what manner they will be captured? Because some of them could be automatic, some of them could be manual also.
Right.
It's not because some of the probably manual input would also come in, but that would also be a central team.
Okay.
So that manual input, you can't leave it to the AOs spread across India.
Okay.
So this risk parameter will undergo change and will evolve as we go along and as we start getting country by country reporting.
So the system will get more and more intelligent.
Yes.
As we perceive.
And this will also impact the reporting requirements, the information that they would like to capture. That may also get
so
revised.
the Form 3CB may itself undergo some changes in the kind of information you may ask for.
No, it may not. But the important point is that 3CEB will not be the only source.
Okay.
Because you will have country by country reporting. You will have master file also.
Okay. So all that will
be used for this parameter.
Okay. So in terms of the CAS, and then you have the non-CAS filters also to pick up the cases. So one of the things which was there in the instruction, that if a case is picked up on a non-TP parameter, the AO cannot refer that case to the TPO if it is not caught by one of the three things, and plus he has to write that he has not checked the transfer pricing part of the assessment. I will ask you, Srivastava ji, you are the old, sort of person from the department. Where does that leave the assessment?
No, assessment is done. I mean, see, the normal routine assessment, what do we do? I mean, the AO doesn't examine each and every aspect.
But does he write that I have not checked this?
Yeah, yeah. See, the point is, I mean, if you see very good old days, I mean, the assessment orders have to contain, they contain a lot of material in the by way of office notes.
Right.
As a matter of part of the file.
Right.
It's no longer being in practice, not much.
Mhm.
So what he can be selective in examining
Mhm.
and in what to audit and what not to audit.
Mhm.
And if he is in this system, if he is not auditing TP
Mhm.
issues, then he completes the assessment and makes and leaves a note that TP aspect has not been looked into. As simple as that.
So where does that leave the assessment, Vijay? Is it open to reopening on some extraneous factors, even if the taxpayer has submitted all the information? Does it put somewhere that risk?
No, I don't think so. Unless the circular gets withdrawn.
Yeah.
If the circular gets withdrawn, then it is open for re-examination. But till the circular exists, this cannot be a subject matter of re-examination.
So, just curious to know why in the instruction it was asked that the AO should mention this.
Yes, yes. There's a reason for it. See, you have seen that even in the past, if the assessee was suffering transfer pricing adjustment,
Mhm.
the instruction has said that his case may not be picked up for TP audit
Mhm.
if it does not come under the risk parameters.
Mhm.
If the adjustment have been below 10 crores.
Mhm.
So now what will happen in such cases? Because some of the many of those cases would already be in appeal.
Mhm.
Now, if you do not select cases for subsequent years
Mhm.
on the same international transaction,
Mhm.
there's a risk that it will go against the department.
Mhm.
So therefore, it is necessary to write in the assessment order that this TP aspect has not been looked into or it has not been selected for TP audit.
Mhm.
So it is to protect ourselves in the past assessment which have been done.
Mhm.
So they should be examined on merit.
Okay.
And they should not be decided by the appellate authority merely only on the basis that it was not picked up for scrutiny in the next year.
So,
It's in a kind of there is no certification from the department that everything is okay on tax TP or front.
so if this case
That's
goes to the CIT appeals level, can he pick up a transfer pricing issue if it has not been examined by the AO?
I don't
No,
think. I don't
He
think.
cannot pick up
For the
a
simple
round.
reason that that's a statutory framework
Mhm.
which gives the power to the AO
Mhm.
to refer the matter to TPO for audit. I mean, that is statutory function cannot be exercised
CIT
by
appeal.
CIT appeal.
By CIT appeals,
It's
it
a
cannot be.
basic jurisdictional issue. I mean, it's not powers may be coterminous, but coterminous power do not extend to the jurisdictional issues.
So now flipping the question, that if a case has been picked up only on TP parameters, is the AO required to do his assessment on the other factors also? Other than referring the matter to the TPO, will he be required to do his routine assessment on all the other aspects of the return?
See, my view is that once a case is selected for scrutiny, the AO is empowered to look into all aspects. Unless there is an instruction from CBDT again that it will be limited scrutiny, like what happens in the case of AIR selection. So in this case of cash selection, I don't think there is any limitation on AO.
So even if it has been picked up for a TP issue, it opens everything for his selection, but not the other way around.
Yeah.
Not the so it's a one-way kind of a street that has been opened. So in terms of the various filters that have been put, so there is one room which is available that your case has not been picked up by CAS, it has not been caught by any of the three criteria, then even if prima facie the AO is seeing that there is something out there, he has no means available to him personally to get that picked up. Am I right?
See,
It's a conscious decision of revenue. I mean, that yes, I mean, given the regime that we want to have, I mean, it's a conscious decision that, okay, even if those be there, let it be. Let it be.
and see, when you take policy decision, you also go by your past experience. In how many times such a situation have arisen or will arise in future that AO on his own, after say, oh, there is something here. How many times it has happened. So policy decisions are also based on actual happening
Some
of the events.
pragmatic,
Yes, pragmatic
yeah.
considerations.
And the CAS, as you said,
Yes.
is something which is a secret part of the thing. But for argument's sake, one can put a turnover filter there also as a risk.
Yeah, it could happen.
They
It
can.
could.
They
Yeah.
can.
It can.
They can.
It can. One can put 15
Yeah.
crores
Yes,
or
yes,
20
Yeah.
crores.
Monetary limit can
Absolutely.
still be one of the
Yeah.
factors.
It can be a
Absolutely.
factor. It will not be so explicit
Yeah.
No.
in the whole thing.
Mm.
So coming to those three conditions where manual selection can happen outside CAS. One of the criteria is that 10 crores criteria, that if you've had an adjustment of 10 crores or more in any of the previous years, then you have to compulsorily pick up, which means a sinner has no redemption. That 5 years ago also you faced an adjustment, you have been a good boy after that, but you will continue to be picked up till this circular remains in force.
No, it's not. I mean, whenever you come out with any risk parameters or outside the risk parameter, you define that the 10 crore adjustment in the past.
Mhm.
Yes, what you are saying is correct to some extent, but then somewhere you have to have a balance. 10 crore could have been 5 crore or could have been 20 crore.
Mhm.
So that is not the question. Question is that there is a risk associated, that there have been adjustment in the past which are pending appeal. It has
Mhm.
not reached finality.
Mhm.
So to that extent, it poses a risk to revenue
Mhm.
if we allow it to go.
Mhm.
So one has to take a decision. And as one goes along, these things can be reviewed or reconsidered based on the final outcome.
So is it only in case of pending decided adversely that will continue
Adverse means
against the taxpayer?
no, then that will be picked up.
It has
Even
to
if
be
it's less than
It has to
10%.
It has to be picked up. So I guess there is that proclaimed offender tag, which your the AO will get picked up. And how will the AO detect that? Is that part of a questionnaire which will go, because AO will not probably have the history of previous adjustments and things like that, or is there a system where the entire history sheet
I
of the
think
No, it is there available.
they will have. They
it's
will have.
available to him.
Yeah,
It's available to him.
that information will be.
So all in all, you would say, Vijay, I come back to the taxpayer, because this is meant to be a taxpayer-friendly measure, to make it less adversarial, plus improve the quality of audits. Are the taxpayers happy with this? Are they looking at it as something which will give them relief? Maybe allow some of the good people who have been compliant some breathing room?
Yeah, certainly. I think they're very, very happy about it. Some of them are a bit skeptical, a bit skeptical right now, because they probably did not get their cases referred back or withdrawn because their reference had happened even before October. So they were not to be returned back. But when you look at what will happen in the next cycle, all of that will get implemented. So they will get all the relief that they're looking at, and the number of cases picked up will go down, and certainly something which is very welcome.
So one question for you, Mr. Varshney, that repeatedly in the statute also it's given, and in the instruction, that whenever the AO has to make a reference to the TPO, even if it is strictly as per the instructions, he has to take the approval of the principal CIT or CIT. So what real discretion do the rubber stamping what
Something on their own outside the instruction,
right?
but probably they just have to ensure that instruction is complied with.
And they cannot also, if something is adhering to the instruction, they cannot stop it.
No, they
They
cannot.
have to
Yeah.
let it through.
It's more of an administrative
It's just passing through
Yes.
that, okay,
supervisory nature of
that this instruction has been complied with. Is
But
that
there is value addition in that second clause, which is a transaction not reported in the 3CB. So that is again where there is a value addition possible. An assessing officer may miss a point that there is an AMP transaction not reported.
right?
and it's part of a transaction that should have been reported. Something like that can get captured once there are separate set of people looking at it. Maybe a commission looking at it may be able to add value to that process.
Or if the AO is trying to pick up a transaction based on those three criterias, the 10 crore, of course, is a mechanical one, but the other ones,
yes,
where there is a bit of subjectivity,
yes,
they can have a role to play
yes,
in maybe not agreeing with him.
Yeah, and
So there is a silver
maybe
lining.
that some more closer scrutiny of the audit report may
Yeah.
indicate otherwise.
So there is a role
Yes, right.
which is going to
And
be
that is what we see on the ground as well. So the assessing officers are cautious before they put it up before the commission, because they need to be sure 100% that this is entirely compliant, and they have to have all the answers. So they are also more sure about it, and therefore there's that second level check before a reference is made.
So moving on to the role of the TPO, I guess the only major change or major difference I saw in the instruction was that TPOs have been asked to make a very detailed order. One is, of course, that they will get more time, as we see a substantial reduction in the pressure. They will get more time. So why this detailed order? They said it will be subject to judicial scrutiny. Obviously, that has always been the case. So it leaves a little bit of vagueness. What kind of detailed order? Does it mean that it will be 500 pages long? What do you feel?
No, it's just that whatever step you are taking, there are enough reasons recorded in the assessment order so that it stands the test of judicial review. That's all.
So
It's not
Srivastava,
that-
has there been any adverse comments in the courts on the robustness of the order in the past, which may have triggered?
There have been.
Okay.
And even the high courts have, in the courts of hearing, they have made large many comments in various cases that yes, this has not been examined, that has not, this aspect is not there, that is. So now, given now a limited number of cases, more time to go into the details, information that they can seek and collect and examine, and also putting it in a proper perspective in the framework. All that will be necessary, and the instruction only re-emphasizes what is always the role of the TPO, that you pass a well-reasoned order.
Right.
I mean, it is not the question of pages. I mean, earlier the pages used to have 70, 80 pages.
Right.
But what of that if 45 pages contains OECD commentary and UN model and all that? I mean, that kind of discussion is not required. What is required is really on the facts of the case, what we have, and how the transaction is not at arm's length.
So Vijay, how do you see any substantial change in how the TPO order will look like after this instruction?
It is likely to be more detailed, with more explanation, more reasoning, more logic as to why the TPO wants to take a particular view. So certainly it is going to be much more detailed.
So before we move on to the next topic, one quick thing on the DRP. The budget has proposed to bring DRP back to where it started, where it is non-appealable from the department's side. So just wanted your thoughts, and then I will ask the others.
See, for that we need to understand the concept of DRP. DRP is an administrative body and not a judicial body like CIT appeal.
Right.
In fact, this is the basic distinction that we had when DRP was introduced. In fact, whenever we used to have an engagement with Foreign Tax Administration, they always used to ask us, we can't understand how you can appeal the order of your own commissioner, you know. So then we need to explain to him that our commissioner is not a part of administrative setup in the true sense. When he occupies the chair of CIT appeal, he is a judicial body, and he is free, and even CBDT instructions are not binding on him. So he can take his own stand in a particular manner. Therefore, you know, that is something probably we need to explain to them, that how, you know, we can still appeal against our commissioner because he's a judiciary body.
Right.
But when it comes to, when DRP was introduced, it was thought of that let it be administrative body. So administrative body means before assessing officer passes an order, it is being reviewed by 3 commissioners.
Right.
And their finding is binding on the assessing officer. So that was a more of an administrative setup, and that is why it was planned that we will not go in for appeal against the order of DRP, because that is a part of our administration.
Right.
And again now probably we have come back to the same situation, because that we need to understand that it is an administrative setup and not a judiciary body.
So it's to maintain the sanctity
Yes.
of the DRP.
Right.
Will that dilute the effectiveness of the DRP in practical sense? In principle.
If you see how the DRP has progressed over the years, the very first year of we recall the DRP function, it was disastrous. But next year it improved. Third year it getting improvement, and over the years it has improving in its function. So the point as Kamlesh has made out that dispute resolution, when we use this expression, we want to resolve the dispute. So a body, a revenue which is seeking to resolve the dispute through a body cannot have the right to appeal against the decision of that body. The whole conceptually that falls apart. I do not think that today, as DRPs are functioning, there should be any material change in the approach.
Vijay, do you agree with this optimism?
There will be some dilution. So you can't just leave it as it is to say that DRP is non-appealable and that's it. CBDT has to do something at the back end to make it work, because DRP has evolved a lot. So we had 3 years when it was non-appealable, and it had improved in those 3 years. Then we made it appealable, it dramatically changed and got much better. But I'm not saying that when it was non-appealable, it wasn't working at all. So even by the third year, it had matured a lot.
Yeah.
But since we made it appealable, suddenly the whole mindset changed, and it shifted to a trend now where I think more 80% of cases have some adjustment getting reduced or modified or something. And so the taxpayers ultimately get a fair deal there. It may not be the best possible, but it's still a fair deal, because by the time you get to the ITAT, your demand has gone down by 40-50%, and you're fighting a smaller battle than before. And combined with that, the department also said we will not appeal a lot of these cases, even though it's appealable, we will not appeal it. So the commissioners who are in DRP are aware that a lot of their orders have not been appealed against. So even if they give relief, it is not detrimental to the interest of the revenue. So the mindset has evolved quite a bit now. Now, if we just curtail it to say that now it is non-appealable and that's it and no further guidance and support, then it might work back, and it will not be as it was for 2016 or December 2015.
So if there are high-pitched orders, it may just pass through without being brought down.
Or maybe there may be some modification minor, but not the kind of relief that we've seen this year, where it's been, hundreds of crores of relief in cases. So those kind of things will be very difficult for DRP. It will still take those 3 years to evolve again. It will start from ground zero to say, okay, now we have to think differently. We'll start, and then next batch will come and say, we could have done something better than this. So we are still going back to maybe 2012-13 and starting all over it.
So considering it's an administrative body, do you think some guidance or instruction could
happen? Yeah, it could happen. I mean,
It could happen.
Once again, see the CBDT and the government, they are committed to make it functional. So that is important. Once that thinking is there at the top, then you can expect improvement in future.
Otherwise, it will remain just a fast forward to the ITAT.
My guess is it is not like that.
No, it won't be that.
I think there is a lot of work happening right now in the context of the DRP.
Right.
So there will be some work that CBDT is thinking about, and they won't just leave it to drift apart all over it.
So what I believe is that, it's all a question of level of maturity that the officers get while working on a certain. TPOs are gaining maturity, and so is the DRP has gained maturity. Yes, there may be some dilution. Some element of fear that if I leave this, there is no option left for the revenue. That kind of feeling, but there are areas where the relief is imminent. There are some areas where relief could be a matter of debate. There are some areas where relief is not possible. So depending upon which area that issue falls in, I think as DRPs are gaining maturity, they'll be giving a better performance. Some dilution, yes, of course, where that element would come in last two areas. May.
Like for instance, an AMP issue. So DRT is willing to give relief in AMP issue, saying that in any case department can appeal it and they're taking to Supreme Court, so something will come out of that. The matter still remains alive, and I'm not, making it zero. And the commissioner decides to appeal it also. It keeps the issue alive. Those kind of things they will not be able to. They'll say that if I now give you full relief, then this chapter
is end of chapter.
That may be difficult for them to do.
So we'll again wait for the baby to grow, I guess. And so moving on to the next part of our series, which is advanced pricing agreement, and scored a half century this year.
Yes, yes. So totally, we did 55 agreements this year, and the total has gone now up to 64. Out of which 55 was done this year. The financial year 15-16.
And so you have about 500 plus applications which you have received. So it's about 10% coverage. And assuming that applications will continue to come, what is your target for the coming year? Is that something? Is there a target for this?
See, as such, CBDT, does interact with us to, understand how many cases can be completed, and they do encourage us to do more and more cases every year.
Right.
But no, there is as such no target for the current year. But from our side, I see it can be easily doubled.
So a century.
So we can have 100 cases in the current financial year. That is possible. See, you need to understand about this APA is that when APA was introduced in India, people were very skeptical. Within the department, outside the department, international community, because this kind of approach has never been practiced in India. In India, we have more of a, assessing officer has given his verdict, it will go to CIT appeal, then it will go to ITAT. We have this kind of system in place.
Not a negotiation.
Not a negotiation. Once you look at foreign tax administration, in fact, I have worked 5 years abroad. There, when you come up with a particular position, you confront it to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer will come and negotiate with you right there. So that kind of approach, we never have it in India. So therefore, even foreign tax administration, the MNCs were skeptical how this APA will pan out in India. And I think we feel very happy that it has worked very well. And now that after signing so many agreements, people are saying, yes, it has worked in India in spite of so many challenges. Now, the next step is that we want to sign so many APAs in a year, which is probably the highest that any country have signed in a year. So that is our next target. And when that happens, that we will be fully satisfied.
So I'm just guessing, but is US the one country which signs the maximum APAs?
Yes, US is the only country which signs more than 100 APAs in a year. Okay. But they have a team of a very strong 60, 70 or 80, I don't know how many people. And we have only 15 to 20 people working in APA. But still, I think we can sign more than 100 APAs.
So number of APA per person, per capita would be still highest.
yes, per capita.
So as the Prime Minister says that do more with less.
Yes,
is the mantra.
Yeah.
So in terms of the split between bilateral and unilateral APAs, I guess the bilateral APAs are very few in number.
Yeah, I think they will be around 10%. See, the reason for that is normally in other tax administration you have more bilateral, but in India we have had less bilateral. One of course was that USA had not opened a bilateral, which he had opened now in February.
Right.
So, but even after that, even now that USA has opened bilateral, I still feel that unilateral will be more. The reason is that once again the same thing, that there have been a lot of litigation in India.
Right.
So people want tax certainty in India. They said we are not that much concerned in the other country, or probably we will not be put to risk audit in the other country. The transaction may be very small from their perspective, or even if it is put to risk audit, I mean, we have seen cases where we try to make adjustment in the profit split method that the taxpayer is following, which is very clear that once you make adjustment into the profit split method, he's going to suffer double taxation in the other country. Taxpayer has agreed to it. He said, okay, I will suffer that much double taxation because he is looking for tax certainty in India. So that is the driving force right now, that because of a lot of litigations, so many APAs are being filed.
So unilateral APAs, how much does that help a taxpayer, considering that it only sort of ring fences Indian tax authorities? Is that what you advise the taxpayers, or do you generally ask them to do a bilateral?
No, you have to leave the choice to them. A lot of times, the India leg of transaction is minuscule, maybe 3% of their global turnover.
Right.
So they'll say, I don't want to involve my parent company into that, and then I have to give 100 other information and get into a big discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather just leave it for India discussion, get a decision. Now, if there is a minor correction there and the other country doesn't like it, we'll deal with it. But probability of that happening is very low. So let's say you are a big insurance company and you are an Indian back office.
Mm-hmm.
Now the insurance profits have nothing to do with the back office profits. So it's just impossible to correlate.
Mm-hmm.
So now you try and get a bilateral into that, it becomes far more complicated. So the best solution is bilateral, but it depends on the critical mass. Is it big enough to justify that kind of expenditure and time commitment at the head office level?
So Srivastava sir, you have lived through the era where MAP was probably the only bilateral solution. Do you see APAs as something which will make MAP more, focused on non-transfer pricing issues, and APA taking center stage on TP-related issues?
I don't. I don't think. Yes, as far as unilateral numbers of unilateral APAs being so large, but I believe as the transactions multiply and the economy shows its own way, then I think bilateral APAs have also to grow in number.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will grow in number. I mean, it depends only on the nature of the transactions that are happening today, or the risk in terms of number or in terms of taxes that they are undergoing. It's only limited to that extent.
And is that more because India came across as a very litigious tax environment that people want to say, okay, let me just make peace with the authorities?
Yeah, that's the fact. So
that could be one factor. Yeah.
In that time when you had loads of litigation happening, you said that I don't want to go through 10, 15 years of litigation. I want to get an answer, even if it means bit of double taxation. So that's why they wanted to get into it. Otherwise, the kind of businesses that are going through APA in India and the kind of size of companies going through that APA may not be in any other country. So they'll say this fairly straightforward. It's a cost plus 15 thing. At best, it can be 17, 18, and it's okay. We will settle it and close it. Or it is a 100 crore company, 15% markup is 15 crores. It could be a matter of 2 or 3 crores here and there. It's not worth worrying about. Let's just settle whenever it comes in assessment. That's the approach anywhere else.
So that 9 years of certainty that you're getting is the main,
thing.
Key,
right. Yes.
factor which is attracting such a huge number.
Right.
So, Mr. Varshney, you said you have a team of 15, 20 people.
No, total people, including bilateral team and unilateral team. I mean, I'm working in unilateral team.
Right.
There's a bilateral team also.
Right.
So total about 50 to 20 people.
So I was reading one article from a foreign author on the APA machinery versus the normal transfer pricing machinery, and they were saying that because APAs are more complex and more in-depth examination is done and a lot of strategic decisions have to be made, sometimes it tends to suck in the best of the field in terms of transfer pricing officers and talent is concerned, leaving the field TPOs not that equipped for their piece of work. Is that something which you see or foresee happening?
I don't think anything of that sort is happening. I mean, the field TPOs are doing their job.
Right.
I mean, in India, once a taxpayer files an AP application, his TPO work does not stop.
Right.
So, TPO is doing his job and we are doing our job. It's just that we have less number of cases, so we can put more efforts and be more elaborate in our work. Just that TPO has large number of cases, so he cannot do that kind of quality. But now with this instruction that we discussed earlier, he would also have time to do good quality work in TP audit. So it's not that.
But if you were looking to add to your team, wouldn't you look around the TPOs and pick the best talent and put him?
No, that everybody wants the best talent to work under them. So I'm not the exception. But who gets it is a different matter.
Okay.
So that's okay. But See, it is also a kind of a motivation to work in APA, in the sense I was talking to my colleague who is working with me, and he has one of the best TPOs in the country. People look at him and all. Now he's working with me.
Mhm.
So I asked him that what is that difference? You enjoy whether working as a TPO or whether working in APA.
Mhm.
So his answer was that simple. As a TPO, we don't know after how many years our work will give result,
Mhm.
and we don't even know whether I might have done some case 6 years back. Now it has been sustained by IIT. I don't even come to know.
It's a
But
minor
here,
cog in the
yeah,
wheel.
here it is. That whatever I'm doing it, I'm still immediate. There is an immediate result. I get satisfaction
Mhm.
once APA is concluded. That
Mhm.
my effort has led to this conclusion.
So there's a higher job
Yeah.
satisfaction.
So there's a high job satisfaction. Yeah.
Okay, that's very good. So you mentioned that there are two teams, one looking after bilateral and
Yes.
one looking. Is there separate type of skill sets or processes which are attached to
No,
these?
no. Processes are done by us only.
Processes are
Yeah,
done.
everything. All the processing, site visit, discussion with the taxpayer, everything is done by us.
Mhm.
Bilateral team does only negotiation with the
Right.
other tax administration.
Right. So Vijay, in the terms of from a taxpayer or a tax filer's perspective, I'm guessing that you would have been involved in some of the APAs. How has been the experience?
So the experience has been very good. And of course, we are trying to keep pace with the AP authorities. I think they
Is
move
that
fast-
so?
they move faster than us. So we have to go back to our clients time and again to try and push them to give the information, to make the submission. And the moment you send the submission, the email is back with clarifications, questions, or even the draft agreement. So in terms of keeping pace, it is difficult for us. So from the authority standpoint, I think everything is in place. So far as we are concerned, we are seeing this as the best answer to most of the litigation and challenges going around. And most of the solutions that are coming across are pretty good. So we know what is the trend, what to expect, what to go through, and just to the numbers, I think the AP authority signed about 16 APAs in the month of March.
Mhm.
So which means that the average of 10 per month is not very difficult to achieve going forward.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
Yeah.
We will achieve the
that's-
100.
That's the speed at which we can move.
Sir, so what has changed, sir, considering that in math, in 5 years, not a single math had happened, and now APs are happening.
Map also happened.
Map,
Right
map
now,
is
but
also
look at the
progress.
US, how many maps were piled
See,
up?
the map and APA can't be compared.
Mhm.
APA, particularly unilateral APAs.
Right.
Yeah.
So, map you involved negotiations with two
So
countries.
it's a more
Okay.
diplomatic
Yes, absolutely.
aspect,
Diplomatic
which causes
And US has always been, one
adamant.
country where, always, this is not.
Mhm.
So APA's progress cannot be compared
Right.
with that.
And how much time does it take in terms of the whole life cycle from application to final signature for an ideal case?
No. See, timeline one cannot say. As Vijay is saying that different taxpayer move at different pace.
Mhm.
So for us, somebody is moving at a faster pace, we take up his case.
Okay.
Timeline depends on many factors. How much time we have, and how do we plan our limited resources, and how quick the taxpayer is in responding. And it is also important that when he is responding, he is continuing to respond, because what happens that if he respond today and I discuss the case with him,
Mhm.
maybe the case has got stuck only on two issues.
Mhm.
And if he does not come back to me within a few days on those two issues,
Mhm.
I have moved on to some other case.
Okay.
Now I have forgotten about that case. He comes to me after 3 months, I have to go through his case again, right from the beginning.
So it's like the planes at the runway that if you
Yeah,
don't
if you-
take off,
yes.
you're back to the
Yes,
last point.
absolutely. So basically, it is very important for the taxpayer to remain proactive if they
Right.
want their case to move quickly.
Okay.
Just to give an example, very first year case, there are some cases which have still not been completed,
Okay.
but we have signed cases which have been filed during the year.
Okay.
In less than 12 months, we have signed cases. So it depends how
So
good
the
the taxpayer is in the
onus is
case.
on the taxpayer.
Yes.
There's no queuing
Yes,
as such
actually,
yeah.
that you have bought a ticket,
Yes.
now you have got priority.
Yes.
Very good. So one of the questions that comes up, especially in the professional community, that everybody looks at APA as something very complex, something which requires probably more number of skill sets, economics, econometrics, tax, negotiation skills, and that it's probably a domain of a large accounting firm, and probably small and medium size or sole practitioners may not be able to do justice. Have you seen have you had experiences which sort of you know affirm or contradict these facts?
Yeah, so that is correct. Your observation is correct that most of the cases are assisted by large accounting firms, and there's a reason for it, because when APA was introduced in India, nobody had any clue about APA, whether tax administration or the tax professionals, anybody. Now at least these big accounting firms had their associated enterprises in other countries who could help them and guide them how to do it.
You're using the right term,
Yeah.
associated enterprises.
No, I differ from that.
Okay, sorry. Okay, whatever. So probably that was that probably could have been the reason why most of the cases are handled by them. Coming to those small firms, I mean, I can assure you that we have experience. In fact, in the month of March, we signed one case which was handled by a very big time professional, very small professional. I don't think he was even CA, he was only an advocate.
Really?
So, and we guided him all throughout. It took time because that was first year case, took 2 years and all. We guided him, my team at Bangalore, they guided him, and that how to file it, how to do it and everything. And we feel really satisfied when ultimately it was signed in the month of March.
So that's a great news. I mean, with due respect, I always feel there should be a level playing field as far as professional skills are concerned. What do you say about that?
I mean, yes, I mean, see the assistance of the economists or the big, it depends on nature of the case. Yes, some cases may require those specialized skills, but it can be handled by anyone given the nature of the case and his ability to fulfill the requirements of negotiating a price. That's all. I mean, ultimately, it's a price negotiation.
Right.
And whether one can do it on his own, I mean, so why not? I mean, if smaller firms or some lesser known entities can venture into this, it's good.
Sir, and the next question is on the secrecy around the APAs, which I guess comes from a universal practice that APAs are very confidential, because taxpayers share a lot of confidential data and things like that. And I believe there is a long-standing case going in the US, IRS, where BNA has fighting a case that APA should be made public. And the last I heard was that IRS has agreed to publish redacted copies, means the confidential parts blanked out and things like that. I believe there was an RTI filed even in India for 5 cases. So how do you see this panning out?
See that RTI went to the CIC. It went up to the highest level of Information Commission, and their final decision has come. So the taxpayer sensitive information would remain confidential. So they allowed us to give some information which is which is not an issue, and no taxpayer would object to sharing such information in public. What kind of method it is, what was the currency, what is the value of international transaction, and these kind of information is no problem. The department is happy to share, and in fact that is an understanding with the taxpayer that we can share these kind of information. So when we sign the agreement, we also write in there that CBDT is free to share some information of what nature. So we have no issue sharing such information as has been dictated to us by CIC. So there is no issue. I mean, in India, all are on the same page that taxpayer sensitive information, it is not only the APA, it is given in our section 138 that it has to be confidential, and we respect that confidentiality.
So, sir, one of the viewers had sent us a question in advance to ask you that please ask Mr. Varshney that ITES companies, what is the typical range that has been negotiated? Is that a question which you feel will breach confidentiality or some statistical?
Yeah, because we can't give that number. It is not possible for us to give us a number. And first of all, there is no fixed number. It depends on lot of other facts profile of a case. One case could be signed at 16, another case can be signed at 19. I mean, there is no range as such.
Right.
There is no fixed number in our mind.
Right.
Because it also depends on the realization period, it depends on the fact profile of the taxpayer, it depends on so many things. So there is no fixed number. And when somebody files APA, he should also not be guided by such fixed number that his case will get done at that fixed number. So that is important to probably understand. Yeah.
Okay. So, comparing APAs with the safe harbor, which came in 2013, I think, 2013. In the safe harbor, let's take ITS. I think 20% and 22% was the safe harbor limit that was framed. I'm assuming that APAs would be below that range. If you are signing successive APAs and ITS, no matter how much fact specific you do, there is a similarity in the economic model. And if you see that there is a consistently, suppose within the range of say 16 to 18% you're negotiating, as a taxpayer, can I expect a review of the safe harbor, or you feel that is somebody else's job?
No, CBDT is looking at reviewing safe harbor.
Right.
That is very much on in the agenda of CBDT, and there is a team which is working on it.
So I think Vijay, any other observations on APA that you feel there is room for improvement or can be done? You're very optimistic on the whole process.
No, I think it's fine. I think nothing can be done better than this right now.
Srivastava sir,
It's doing very well. I mean,
so we should, if something is going on fine, we should not overly criticize it.
No. Absolutely.
And we wish you score a century. We are a cricketing nation.
Right.
A century is celebrated much more than a half century.
Right.
So we are almost up for time. I will just take 5 minutes to discuss equalization levy because it was part of BEPS action item 1. It has come in again. I will use the word thunderbolt. It was recommended by the committee which was set up for taxation of e-commerce. But the BEPS action item had given 3 options. What made you choose the third and probably the least taxpayer-friendly option?
No, it's not. See, let us understand. Doing BEPS negotiation, consensus could not be reached. Now, there are 2 things here. One is whether something has to be done to capture e-commerce transactions, because country like India are losing out in conventional way of taxation. Everybody agrees. Yes, in conventional method of taxation, country like India, consumer economies, they are losing out. They are not getting their due share on e-commerce. So there is a consensus on that. The second issue, that how to do it, how to compensate such economies, there was no consensus. And therefore, they had given some options. Now, we would have been happier if consensus had been reached and we would have done it through DTA routes, either through withholding tax or through definition of permanent establishment. But because there was no consensus, we had no option but to go for this route.
And does the department feel that there is a substantial revenue at stake?
I mean, there is revenue at stake definitely, and which will grow in future, because right now we are covering only one transaction, and let's see how it works. But yes, there is a revenue involved. There is no doubt.
Pastor, what do you feel? It's part of the Finance Act, not part of the Income Tax Act.
Yes,
Where does
it had necessarily had to be, because equalization levy, the way it is now to be.
So what tax is it? Is it a direct tax, indirect tax? Is it a state subject, a union subject?
In fact, it's more in the nature of an indirect tax, but forming part of a direct tax. As a substitute for what we could have done under direct tax, we are doing.
And do you think the constitutionality of this could be
I do not think
litigated or argued?
No, constitutionally.
It has happened before. Security transaction tax was implemented exactly in the same way through the Finance Act. and not in the Income Tax Act. But
So
it
was
had
service tax.
references.
Yeah?
So was service tax.
Service
Yeah.
tax.
Yeah.
So the power to levy that tax
Mhm.
is, I don't think that can be.
And
We should-
considering that there is a reverse charge, on a service tax, isn't, there are double kind of indirect taxation which is happening, because you're targeting B2B commerce, e-commerce. The taxpayer is not getting tax credit in the other country. It is just increasing the transaction cost for the Indian consumer. So who is happy here?
No, see, once we have a good competition, so that increase in transaction cost will not happen, because there will be somebody who is having PE in India or an Indian company who is doing that business. So it is only that extra levy is only for some foreign enterprise who does not have a permanent establishment in India. Now, if he has a monopoly, then it's a different game. He can pass on that levy to India.
So does Google have a monopoly?
Yeah, no, but I think once you have,
So in a way, we are indirectly telling them, please open a permanent establishment.
Yeah.
We are very happy
Yeah.
to
yeah, exactly.
not
Yes.
tax you.
No, that will not solve it. Because when the permanent establishment pays the head office, there is going to be a levy.
So there is a cascading effect anyway in a B2B transaction. So unless you make that entity a permanent establishment of the foreign company,
You make it, but you don't pay the head office, and you pay tax on the entire income of the permanent establishment, then it's okay.
Mhm.
But then you're paying 42% tax on that.
Yeah.
But you're paying any part of that back as advertising cost,
Right.
back to the head office,
Mhm.
and then you're saying my net profit here is 10%, I'm paying 42% tax on that.
Right.
The 90% you paid out, there is a tax on that. The equalization levy is there on that.
So
So there is no structuring available. You have to pay for it. If the website is owned outside and the non-resident is charging for it, either you will pay it as equalization levy by the consumer himself or by the permanent establishment. Someone is going to pay for it.
So is there any corporate sort of action happening on it to support or to withdraw it? Just like there was a huge hullabulla on the Provident Fund. Is there any corporate action happening around equalization?
No, I
levy?
think the whatever we call the media companies, the one which have the websites. So they are concerned about it because they will end up having to lose 6% of their top line
That's right.
in this process. So they are concerned and they are pushing for a more scientific measurement of why the 6%, because that doesn't seem to fit in with economics.
Right.
Because if I really look at it, you're saying that if a company essentially makes, let's say, 30% profitability outside India, and you are saying that half of that profit arises in India, and on that you apply the 40% tax, then you come to 6%. So first is whether 30% profitability is the right assumption, whether 50-50 sharing is appropriate when that entity does nothing in India. It's just a website which is running outside India, and it's got all algorithm, everything sitting outside. It's just consumers using it. So even if you want to give a weightage for consumers, it should be less than 50%. So those are some economic discussion going on. I don't know where it will land up, but they are concerned about the 6% being a higher number.
So is 6% the only bone of contention here, or would you be happier if it was brought within the framework of the Income Tax Act?
That could be really the ideal situation. But as Kamlesh pointed out, I mean, there is no consensus. I mean,
but it just started, right? So we started talking about it 2 years back. So I don't think the Indian government has given up or the OECD has given up. It will happen. But equalization levy in the interim and ultimately a bilateral process to the treaty.
So are we? Is India the first country of the blocks on equalization levy?
I think there are others also. There are others also.
There are
others also.
But maybe not the same terminology.
Yeah,
I think they have VAT.
Yeah.
Put it
Yeah,
as a
whatever.
VAT or
Yes.
something. But
See, in fact, UK went way ahead. The
Yeah.
diverted profit tax is nothing but something of this kind, which is called Google tax.
Right.
But that they had done even without waiting for G20 reports or BAFS report.
So it's going to create some bit of raise some dust, I guess.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and watch.
It will settle down over the.
It will trigger a discussion because when more and more countries do this, then someone has to sit together and decide how you want to tax it. Because you'll have different taxes, no credits, and the companies will then start suffering. So there'll have to be a consensus ultimately.
In fact, one of the outcome of such different steps being taken by different countries, and once the whole BAPS plan is being implemented and different countries interpreting in a different manner, then you will say more bilateral API on complex issues.
Okay.
So that will be the time.
So countries will be ready to come to the negotiation table
Right.
to protect their
Yes.
companies
Correct.
doing business.
That's all.
So let's wait and watch. It was a very just quick discussion on equalization levy. So that brings us to the end of today's webcast, and I thank you for
Thank you.
the insights, Mr. Varshney, Mr. Srivastava, Mr. Iyer. We hope to have you fairly sometime soon again. So thank you for your continued support, and I hope the viewers equally enjoyed it as well. So thank you, and have a
Thank
very
you.
nice day and a great weekend.
Thank you, Amitav.
Thank you.
Thank you.